I'm excited to introduce you to Miss Mackenzie again, and she's going to introduce our next rotation, which is our agronomist. So, Mackenzie, without further ado, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Brittany. Producing quality crops on over 400 acres of land is important at Corner View Dairy Farm. Those crops are used to make the TMR, also known as total mixed ration, which provides the cows needed energy and nutrients for them to produce high quality milk. Today we have John Stutzman, who currently works with Corner View Dairy and other dairy producers on their crop production farm.
John Stutzman, I've been an agronomist for an independent crop consulting in the independent crop consulting business for the last 35 years. I started as an internship while I was a junior at college at Penn State, and worked a summer for an independent agronomist scouting fields. And then I started with them full time after graduation. And in 2000, almost 24 years ago, started Stutzman Crop Care and went on my own. We service about 75,000 acres with maybe 150 clients from basically throughout the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania and into north central New Jersey. We do work with a lot of dairy producers, but not only dairy producers. Our business is sort of divided into four sections, I like to think. One is soil fertility and crop nutrition. We do a lot of soil testing. We have a hydraulic soil probe that we use. We're probably taking somewhere around 5,000 soil tests a year, representing 5,000 different fields. Some of those are done with precision, using 1 acre grids or to help create fertility zones that we use later in precision ag. Some are more, composite samples representing, smaller fields. Second part of our business is the crop protection part. We're scouting fields and making, pest management recommendations for whether it be weeds, insect, or disease. In the last 30 years, we've certainly got new things that have come along. The latest, I brought a plant to show.
Yeah.
The latest was a disease that I think it's been in Pennsylvania for maybe 5-6 years, but it's basically taken this long to hit us in Berks County in the Lehigh Valley. This was our first year of maybe a full-blown problem of the disease tar spot. Again, tar spot, 30 years ago, I didn't know what tar spot was. Now it's a disease that came across from the mountains of Mexico and worked its way across the country. We've got a lot to learn about that particular management of that particular disease.
Yeah.
The third part of it, now that we're starting to get into, and not all farms have the ability to utilize it as much as others, but we're getting into more precision agriculture, using grid samples, precision sampling. Probably in the 90s, combines became outfitted with yield monitors, and we're estimating that yield as that combine rolls across the field. Not too long after that, we started adding, GPS coordinates to that yield data so that we have geo-referenced yields, and we're using those yield maps and soil data, soil tests, soil data maps to create zones, productivity zones in that field, and manage them accordingly. We're creating, population scripts for corn planters so that we might range from 28,000 to 38,000 on a particular field as that planter goes across the field, and then using those same zones to vary fertility, such as nitrogen and maybe even other crop nutrients. I've said to some of the other groups before me, one of the things that keeps me interested, that keeps me going every year, is our soil weighs approximately 2 million pounds. An acre slice of soil, 6 2/3 inches deep,
Wow.
weighs about 2 million pounds. And to me, it's nothing short of a miracle every year that we take 34,000 seeds in the case of corn, mix it with a few hundred pounds of fertilizer and 2 million pounds of dirt, and we end up getting upwards to 200-300 bushel corn per acre. Right. It is nothing short of a miracle. And I think something that we have in common with yeah, as helping crop producers maximize their inputs with, as I compare it to whether it's, a dairy cow milking milk or you know, finishing swine or beef. The yield that we get out of these crops, whether it be corn, pumpkins, soybeans, alfalfa, is a function of our potential and the amount of stress that plant encounters along with it, along with that. And, like the world record holder in Virginia right now is probably I think it's somewhere around 600 bushel per acre. Pennsylvania's average is maybe 170, 160 something. I'm not sure exactly what it was last year, but obviously we're starting off with similar opportunities with similar corn genetics. That 600 bushel field had a lot less stress than our 150 bushel field does. So what we're trying to do is minimize those stresses and create, I like to think of it as less bad days. If a cow has a bad day, her milk production drops for that day, and then she's got to recover. So we don't want these plants to have any bad days. It's a problem we'll never completely fix. So it's good job security for me, but that's my goal, is to have that all of our seeds come up the same time, and for them not to experience stress.
Right.
We'll never meet that goal, but we're going to try.
Yeah. So how I know, like, obviously creating a good fertile environment, so adding different nutrients and fertilizers you mentioned, I'm sure is one way you can help create less stress. What are some other, and maybe I think you had mentioned pest management.
Well,
Am I missing something else that can help create less stress to the soil?
We're also some of us are limited with our soil. There's a big focus on soil health right now, and I think it's an excellent opportunity for us to increase or to reduce some of that stress by increasing soil health. Our function of something that limits crop yields every year is soil compaction. And soil compaction is something that, whether we're no-till or we're tilled, we are going to cause it because we have equipment to drive across that field. In the case of dairy farms, they have manure spreaders and manure tankers that have to drive across that field. We are going to cause compaction. But I like to think of it, we want to try to maximize, whether we're talking about cover crops, and if the soil health component sort of goes hand in hand with the soil health or soil compaction component, in that we want a soil that recovers. And if we drive on a sponge and then drive off of it, it recovers after we compact it.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen quite that easily in soil, but that's what we want to happen. Is we want that soil to recover, and helping increase organic matter and that focus on soil health, and helping soil recover from the compaction that we're going to cause is another one of our focuses. Again, it comes back to that. We're trying to take away those bad days. If corn roots hit a compacted zone in that soil, that's going to be one of those bad days we're talking about. So we want to try and minimize those. And it's probably an unattainable goal to get zero stress, but that's what we're trying.
Yeah, no, I love that.
I'll use an example I have right here.
Go for it.
These were 2 years that I picked yesterday from one of my fields. They were the same yield, or I'm sorry, the same variety, same field, planted on the same day. This cob here, if I had 34,000 of them, would probably represent about 30, right around 300 bushel.
Wow.
This one probably about 250. Now we're probably going to get somewhere in between. But again, it's an example of the difference between, this was a challenging year. We had, no rain for 6 weeks after the corn was planted. And, that was a struggle in itself to get corn out of the ground. And, obviously this one had less stress than this one. So again, that's what we're all.
Yeah. And this might be a very obvious question, but that's purely because of size, or counting the kernels, or what was kind of your way of?
If we count the kernel, we were counting the kernels. This one has about 700 kernels, and this one has about 575. And we can take an estimate of how many kernels per bushel of corn to come up with an average. It's a pretty crude way of estimating yields, but sometimes that's all we have.
Sure. No. And so obviously this is important, but can you explain why it's important to understand the yield that's going to be coming? Like what's the benefit to you? What's the benefit to the farmer of
Well,
understanding
a
that?
lot of farmers have to make management. One of the things we're doing, we do for our customers in the month of August is doing our best to estimate crop yields. Some of them, whether they're feeding cows or some sort of livestock, they have to start planning for what they're going to do if they don't have the feed that they need to feed that that herd for the whole year. In the case of many of in our area here, a lot of producers would also produce enough, maybe in excess of what they would feed their livestock, or maybe they're just grain producers only, and they need to start making marketing decisions based on whether they have the storage for it or not. So, there's a whole host of reasons why we want to know. We're also, I think, um, getting to the point, and I think this has some time to go before it's perfected, but I think before many of these kids are out of school, or out of college anyway, we will have the ability to estimate yields with just satellite imagery. There's different people or companies working on generating the algorithms and the data to estimate yields just based on infrared satellite imagery that is estimating plant health and correlating that to crop yields. I think it's got a little ways to go before we can trust it, but it's maybe a bit unsettling to think of what the market could do for the first person that figures out how to really do an estimate of what crops are before we know what we have,
Right. Yeah.
and what that information can, whether it's the commodity markets in general, or as it relates to well, any commodity, whether it's
Yeah.
milk or whatever, or ethanol.
Yeah. No, that's an incredible concept and idea. Just would love exciting to see the new technology and the new opportunities that that are continue coming into the ag world and the dairy world. It's pretty cool to see all that happening.
Yeah.
Now you've mentioned a couple of times, and I just want to help everyone understand. You mentioned scouting and scouting fields. Can you just explain what you do when you scout a field and why it's important to do
Yes.
that?
Well, we'll start in the spring, probably like March. We'll start um, scouting our small grain fields and alfalfa fields for weed control. And again, a lot of these farms, scouting is something most farms should be doing themselves, and are doing it themselves. But it's I think a lot of them have come to rely on having that extra set of eyes, especially concentrated eyes that are focused on these crops. It helps take some of that. As scouts, we're providing management information that we're seeing in the field to help them make decisions, whether it be weed control decisions. After planting, we're evaluating the stands of, did we have a reason for replant, or not? Those kind of things. Do we have insects that meet threshold, and is there enough weeds that make it worthwhile spraying? What kind of weeds do we have out there? Something that's come about in the last, especially the last 10 years, is resistant weeds. And, we're looking at the different types of herbicides in terms of modes of action, and, making sure that we have multiple modes of action so that we can minimize resistance buildup in weeds. And, for those weeds that are resistant, making sure that we have a mode of action that will still have some activity on it. And like I said, now with some of these diseases, that this scouting is something that, the focus changes every time we go out there because the season's progressing.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. And that sounds like so scouting a field is pretty fundamental to what you guys are doing. And that's really
Yes.
where you start to gather the information, to analyze, and then you come back as a team and say, okay, let's make some decisions, and we're going to do this management for pest management.
Right.
We're going to add this fertilizer. Gotcha. So it's the first step to making all the decisions you do.
Right.
Very cool. Now, you mentioned that this is your business? Like you started your own business and got into this, and what inspired you to want to do that and go out on your own? What was that process for you?
I went to a junior college in Kansas and got it. I knew I wanted to go to school, but didn't want to go 4 years. And they had a 2-year ag business program, and graduated from that, and didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went to Penn State for 2 years, and um, I would say the independent ag consulting business was just beginning when I was finishing college, and I started with a company that had started doing it, and had the opportunity in 2000 to start it on my own, and we you know it's I guess it's I when I was in college I didn't know what it was called, but
Right.
there's certainly a lot more. What I like about the independent ag consulting business is that we talked about 4 different areas, whether it be pest management, soil fertility, the precision, even some of the regulatory things. Um, we some people would choose to specialize in one of those things, and that's fine. But in my case, I get to do a little bit of everything depending on the time of year.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. I'm sure that keeps your day to day pretty variable, right? So
Pretty,
do you
yes.
have a standard day to day, or what does your day to day look like for you?
It's never standard. Certainly this time of year, we're sort of in between things, and that there's not much more scouting that we can do. Sure, our scouting is less focused than it is in the summer, and we're just at a point where we're starting to gear up for soil testing full bore, so that as crops come off, we can get the field sampled.
Gotcha.
And then we spend the whole winter trying to set up basically an individual crop management plan for each individual customer that we start work on throughout the winter, and then come spring we start it all over again.
Wow. So yours is, so I guess your day to day changes based off the season, and
Yes.
then each season it kind of stays the same, but it's very it changes. Interesting. Okay, very cool.
Yes.
What's so I think you touched on it a little bit, but maybe if you have a specific thing, what's your favorite part of being an agronomist? Favorite thing you get to do, or favorite activity?
I think maybe I said it before, but my favorite part is that, and like I said, the only way I can describe it is the miracle of putting a few hundred pounds on a small slice of dirt that weighs 2 million pounds, and we put a few hundred pounds of fertilizer on it in some form or another, and end up multiplying our seeds by how many fold. And to me, that's nothing short of a miracle.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. Yeah, you're literally growing crops and feeding the world and our animals, and it's a pretty cool part of the system to be part of.
We have some nutrients. I just take one in particular. We're learning more about some of the micronutrients, and boron is one that, in particular, we live in an area that's deficient in boron because boron's very soluble and doesn't stay in the soil. And a 200 bushel, 300 bushel corn, I believe, takes something like 0.6 of a pound of boron. How can 0.6 of a pound of anything make a difference when you mix it with 2 million pounds of dirt? That comes to that miracle we're talking about.
Right. And it does. It makes a big difference as soon as you add that little bit. Yeah. Interesting. Now, our camera just kind of gave us a preview of the things behind you. What are those white giant worm things behind you? And does that have anything to do with your job?
Not necessarily. Those are things that Cornerview uses to store their forages. Some people would, some farms would use upright silos. Some would use concrete bunks, and in this case, they've just adapted to using the bags that they're filling with. Whether it be corn silage, I think there's high moisture barley and high moisture corn and haylage. There's a little bit of everything. Some of those.
Sure.
They're it's just what they've adapted to using for feed storage.
Yeah, but you help them raise those crops. So the crops that you help them raise and figure out management for are now stored in there for them to be able to feed all year long for their cows. So it's pretty cool.
Right.
Very cool.
I like the focus on, their focus is on these cows not having any bad days, so they always milk to the best of their ability.
Hmm.
Our focus is on the crops not having bad days, so that the crops yield to the best. And
Yeah.
part of it goes they go hand in hand, I think.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, a good crop means good milk production. So absolutely. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us at all about your career, about the job opportunities, or just life lessons in general for our high schoolers listening today?
I've told some of the groups before here that they should never underestimate some of the opportunities that are out there. I mean, some of the interns that we've had throughout the years. I like to think about where some of them have ended up. One of them is an agronomist full time for me now. Some are in seed sales, some are in pesticide sales for major worldwide companies. One in particular, for a brief time, ended up servicing cotton pickers across the world for John Deere. So they should
Huh.
never second guess the opportunities that are out there,
Right.
um,
That's
whether it be
amazing.
dairy related or ag in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. I couldn't agree with you more. I think there's so many opportunities out there. And this sounds like a pretty cool hands-on career to be able to work with people, work with crops, understand soil, getting to work with nutrients and fertilization, and just there's so many different steps. And like you said, that miracle of just taking so few materials and creating a crop that's feeding our world and our animals. That's pretty cool.
Obviously,
Awesome.
we only have a small part of it, but it's
Right.
I enjoy that part.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, John. We really had a great time chatting with you today. We appreciate your time, and I know everyone else enjoyed hearing from you. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you.